Hello everyone, I'm Annie Gibbins and you're listening to Memoirs of Successful Women, the podcast where you get to hear candid conversations with fascinating women from around the globe who share aspects of their business and life journey, how they measure their success and what they have learnt along the way. Well, hello everybody and welcome to Memoirs of Successful Women. Today I am super excited to introduce to you Jocelyn Bellows, who is a breakdown to wake up coach, author, podcast host and motivational speaker. We're going to be talking about why she passionately works with people who have had a breakdown to actually wake up to their sole purpose of what their life was actually supposed to be like and what they are to do now. They're moving forward in their life. So welcome to the program, Jocelyn.
Oh, Annie, thank you so much for having me. And what a beautiful introduction. Like sometimes I hear that, I'm like, oh wait, those are the check marks right now.
Exactly. That is you, you awesome woman. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. So tell me about your book at the moment, Breakdown to Wake Up. What is that all
Yeah.
about?
Yeah, so that's just been such a fun adventure. And so you and I both have the reason that we're connected. We both connected through Dawn Bates, who is publisher for this book. And I know she's working on book number 2 for you. And I don't know when the show will go live, but
Yeah.
book 2 is underway, as
Yes.
I know. And so Dawn and I connected, oh gosh, a few months ago. And I think the intent was to talk about exchanging podcasts. And in that conversation, I don't think either of us talked about our shows. And I had a download that came through. And the download was ask this woman to be part of a panel series that I was literally creating as the words were coming out of my mouth. The following week, not only did she say yes, and by the end of that week, I think I had 8 or 9 panelists. And now I have 4 panels, and it's just exploded. However, the following week after that first conversation, she and I connected again because I noticed, she was just such a marketing whiz. And I was like, all right, that's something that I know that I can go into, and there's areas where I can learn more. So I reached out to her and said, this is what I'm thinking I want to call the series. And she immediately Googled something and she's like, yes, not only that, this is your book. And I had a very visceral reaction to her. I didn't respond, I had a reaction. And that reaction was not that of a positive one. It was like, yeah, buzz off. I'm not listening to you. And in saying that, I also knew she was calling me forward.
Oh,
And I couldn't not answer that call.
yeah.
It's there in front of me. And so really the conversation that ensued very quickly in that conversation in the days to come, because it really wasn't even weeks. So the panels were all about the break up to wake up component. Is when we break up with components of our being. It may be internal. It's both internal relationships and external relationships, whether it be romantic, job change.
Yeah.
But moreover, it's like breaking up with ways of our being and how we're showing up in life, to waking up to the reality of who we really can be and who we get to be when we speak our voice and we use it in a way that's empowering and not diminishing others, just empowering ourselves. And so that was going to be the premise of the panels. And this has been my brand. This is the coaching that I've been doing. And then she was like, yeah, this is your book. I was like, oh, you're right. As here, my journey, where I really kind of start, say this is my poignant start, although obviously I've done a lot beforehand, was when my marriage ended. And walking and ending that marriage because I was so unhappy. And I was so unhappy with myself. And I could tell you, I couldn't identify that at the time. And the learnings that I received in finding myself through that journey. And I remember in those early days reaching out to friends who were further along. And I had a lot of crutches. I called them my crutches because I don't think I could have done it on my own, truly. But I had other people sharing with me the darkness that they'd been through, and they were on the other side of that dark tunnel, and like standing, basking in the light, not just standing in it, but like arms fully raised and fully embracing the beauty that they received as a result of what they went through. Like, this journey is not for nothing. It's
mm,
fulfilling.
mm,
And as I began to share the dark side, the ugliness, the growth that I was experiencing, all of it, people started showing up in very different ways than they ever had before. And then I thought, I need to put this in. I need to put this in writing. And so that's what I did.
mm,
And it started with, okay, this I know what I'm going to write about. Boom, that's easy,
mm.
right?
Yeah.
It gets to the end when you do that, when you share, you give permission for other people to do the same. And I put the call out into the world. And 3 weeks later, I had 15 authors, all wanted to come out and come through and do exactly the same,
Mm,
share a portion of their journey,
mm.
not only for their own healing,
Yeah.
healing of others.
Others. Yeah, exactly. It's very cathartic, isn't it? Just writing down your story. That's right. Initially for you and all of
I,
the learning and the unpacking and emotional journey that comes with that. And then being able to then release it to the world so that they can one know, some of the things that they may not have known, but mainly so that they can connect and it initiates, it's the spark of their next journey, right? Like you had with Dawn, that
yes,
moment of, I feel uncomfortable here, but oh my gosh, she's talking to me. I'm this person in a different situation, different context, of course, but it's the same sort of theme of a
I'm
moment.
curious. Have you actually read your first book from cover to cover?
Have I read my book?
Yes. Yeah. Have you read your book? I know I'm being interviewed, but I'm just curious.
Yes, I have read my book cover to cover, and yeah, it is amazing. It actually feels it's an incredible experience compared to just writing down pieces of it, and then you read it for yourself. And then I've read it in a way of, if I didn't know Annie Gibbins and I read Becoming Annie, what would that feel like, and how would I connect with this woman? So I've sort of done the whole journey with it, probably 3 times. Just reading it to go, is that really what I wanted to say? And then reading it again to experience it. And then, yeah. And then when other people around the world started reading it and then writing me their feedback, I kind of went, oh, I want to read it in their eyes, and how would they connect. And yeah, it's been really, it's a bit like what you were sharing then on the, when you invite other people to then, you know be on your podcast, or get connected with your story. It's interesting, isn't it, what they get out of it? And the most amazing thing is, particularly because mine was an autobiography, it's amazing that they get different things. What you think is a key sharing or learning for you, they're like, oh yeah, I read that bit, but they were really touched by something else. Like all these different aspects of our life. The most incidental sometimes can be the most meaningful for someone else. And that's really fascinating, and
And
that's why we share, isn't it?
so, the process when it began, I wrote my chapter in maybe a night,
Mm,
maybe two at most. And I remember like making notes, like I gotta go deeper here, I gotta go deeper here. But beyond that, I was like, that was like for me very easy because the words were ready. I was ready to tell my story.
mm,
And when it came time for all the other authors to submit their chapters, and I'm reading them from a content standpoint.
mm.
I understand, like, are they writing in line with the conversation we want to put into the world?
Yeah.
And there was one or two that went back and had to have some revision, and several of which I was like, okay, guys, we need a little more depth. Like you're here, and I'm going to ask you to step in a little deeper,
Rip
right?
off that Band-Aid a bit more. Yeah.
Right, right. And I mean, I asked it of myself. So what I asked of others was not going to be anything I wasn't going to ask of myself.
Mm,
Um, and it was really interesting for me because each chapter is so unique to each
mm,
book. We all have our own journeys.
yeah.
What I found amazing, and this is what I hope for readers, this is what I hope for the readers to find, is that when they were reading through each of these chapters, they see pieces of themselves in every
Mm,
single, because our journeys are all unique. Reading yours is your journey. I guarantee I'll see some of me
yeah.
pieces.
Yeah.
I was reading. There was one night in particular. It was one of the last chapters that I think it's the last chapter in the book, talking about broken parenthood and how Arlene wasn't feeling like she was showing up for her child, in a way that she wanted to, because it was repeating a pattern of trauma from her own childhood.
Mhm.
And the night that that came through, it was the last chapter. We were getting close to having to turn this book over, full manuscript over to the typesetter. So there's like, yeah, there's a bit of a pressure point on there.
Yeah.
And I have my child part time because I do share time with him and his dad. And do you know what I did that night? That chapter came in. I dropped what I was doing with my child to read this chapter about being a neglectful parent. I am neglecting my own child in this process. Like, he is 6 years old. He was five at the, no, he was six because it was like, it was only a couple of months ago. 6 years old. I left him on his own. I mean, yes, he's fine, but I left him to his own devices instead of spending time with him and reading it when he went to bed, which I could have done. I did this thing, right? My ego was certainly in full force. But what I recognized though is, I saw myself
Yeah.
and how I was being in this chapter. And that happened with every single chapter that came through. As they came through, I was like, oh my God, I see this. Oh my gosh, I'm really like honestly living this out right
Mm.
now. And that piece just like, it blew me away.
Wow.
And now, like, I just received my book yesterday or the day before. So I literally hold it, the first night it arrived, I sat with it and held it in my hands because it hasn't really felt real.
Yes.
Put this thing in the world. And you're like, I just did all of this. I poured myself into this.
Yeah.
The day that went for pre-sale, the day that it went for sale, I thought I was going to be celebrating. And that wasn't the case. I
Mm.
was in dark places. I was still processing what I just had happened.
Yeah.
I still processing, even though the story was 3 years old.
Mm.
There was new pieces of it, and there was new pieces of my leadership and who I was showing up to be in the project. It was all coming through. So when the book arrived the other night, my gut instinct is always to like go share it with the world, right? And I was like, no, because part of what I'm working on right now is staying within my being. I was
Mm.
like, this is for me. So I just sat for like half an hour staring at this book, like caressing it, like,
Yeah.
believe it's here. And last night I finally started reading my chapter. And it feels out of body because I'm like, yes, I know I wrote these words. Yes, I know I wrote this. It doesn't feel like mine.
Mm.
And then I opened to a different chapter. And of course, the irony is it's all about the sacred feminine. I was like, oh, well, this is totally what I'm working on right now. And of course, and I didn't preconceive where I opened it. I literally like opened the book and it opened to that first page of that chapter. It was like, all right, got it. I hear you. you know?
Amazing. It's an amazing journey. And I know it takes, even after you've done something, released it, it's amazing the channel of events and time that requires just to keep still sort of being on that journey and sort of getting everything out of it that it's meant to bring you. And sometimes we think just finalizing, writing that last chapter or submitting that to a publisher or speaking about it once, openly, then you go, oh, well, I'm done now. I can move on to, but no, right? Because rewriting a narrative that you've held for a very long time takes often a very long time. It takes layers and layers and layers to unpack, and it takes time to rewrite that and confirm that a time and time again. That's what I find anyway. So these people who say things just happen, quick fixes, you can just suddenly write a new story and then live and breathe it from tomorrow. You kind of go, well, not really. It's kind of like, it's like these women who've been pregnant for 9 months and then expect to just bounce back the next day. It's kind of like, no, when your body has been through a very big experience, it will take probably equal time, if not more, when you're feeding to then actually get back to where you were. And the funny thing is, you'll come out back in a slightly different space, right? In fact, quite a different space if the example was
Yes.
us becoming a mom for the first time. So yeah, it's
I love how you believe that, and because you're absolutely right. And I'm going to take that to a step of expectation.
mm,
Right? We have expectation of what it's meant to look like on the other side, or the next step, or the next piece.
mm,
And when we fall short of that, that's when we cause ourselves a lot of entrapment, a lot of pain, a lot of dis-ease, and it's so unnecessary. It's like this evil thing we do to ourselves. right? I mean, like, and I'm catching myself right now. I'm doing some really so as if it wasn't enough to write this book. And the book truly, it was time.
Mm.
When everything aligned the way it was meant to align. When Dawn showed up in my world, I knew I was ready. When these authors showed up, because I put a call. That was it. One call into the world and said, I'm looking for 15, who's ready? And I had authors and one other authors.
Wow.
And I said, okay, so these other, not only do I feel like I'm hitting something for myself, there are people out there who are ready to do exactly the same. And the catharsis that they've received as a result has been amazing. Well, in this process, about a week before, we had about a 10-day window from when the initial script came together to the final script going out for the typesetter. So we had a 10-day window. And somewhere in that 10-day window, I had a full on meltdown on a trail. I was hiking with a girlfriend, and she was sharing some amazing things that were happening in her world. And she's had a really rough go for the last few years since I've known her. And so there's all these beautiful openings are happening for her. And I can't even be present for it because I'm so entrapped in my ego telling me I've got to be a certain way. I've got to show up in this way. And this has got to have this expectation. And I have to be here for these other people. And I have to like putting all this weight on my shoulders to the point that I literally collapsed. I collapsed on the trail. I fell to my knees sobbing once again, which is how I start my journey, by the way, in this book. And the recognition of what I am doing isn't working.
Yeah.
And it needs to have a radical shift.
Hmm.
Right. And here I am again. I'm like, yes, I teach this to other people. I hold space. This is why I do the work this is why I show up the way that I do for
Hmm.
other people, because it's been mine.
Yeah.
Every single experience that I've had is an experience for someone else to be able to grow for themselves. What is holding them back? What are their limitations? What is it that they told themselves? Or what is it someone else told them that they believed
Yeah.
was theirs?
Mm.
And that was a lot of what was happening in
Mm.
this book process. And so I had this total, again, meltdown in the midst. The book wasn't even done. It wasn't even done. I was like, oh my gosh, how am I going to get through? Like, limp. I was like, how am I going to limp through the rest of this? I am
Yeah.
so excited because this is the biggest thing I think I've ever really done. And I can't even be with it because it's so overwhelming and crushing,
Yeah.
right? What am I doing wrong, right? Which, by the way, don't ever do that to yourselves, guys.
Mm.
You don't get it wrong, you have experience. And
Mm.
you get to experience more than it.
100%.
And so an opportunity showed up for me to do medicine, to do plant medicine, which is something I've never considered. In fact, I had a tremendous amount of judgment around. I had friends who were in doing it and seeing some amazing results, experiencing amazing openings. And here I am, like really railing against it. But here's the opportunity. And I knew I had been calling it forward.
Mm.
So I took it. I jumped in. I leapt into it and said, okay, what are these learnings? What's in here for me? Because there's something in here for me.
Mm.
And I went for this medicine. I went to do this journey. I had no idea what to expect any more than I think I had some expectation around it. I was like, I'm going to feel amazing, right? All my pain's going to be gone and I'm going to break through all this stuff, which sort of happened. The side of it. And it's an experience that I can't even really put words around right now because it's still unfolding and there's new openings and I'm acknowledging how I've shown up in my life and where I've shortcutted myself and shortchanged myself.
Mm.
And in this piece, I also knew at the beginning of book one that this was going to be a 3-part series.
Mm.
And book two is about breakdowns in community.
Mm.
And I knew that. Like I knew book two was going to be community, book three is going to be societal breakdowns and who are we showing up as. And I was
Wow.
like, wait a minute. So here I am putting this like marker out there. This is going to be the next milestone, right?
Yeah.
Not worried about the authors, they'll show up.
Yeah.
Not worried about the content, it'll show up, right?
Mm.
Oh, what am I gonna write about? What have I been in a community breakdown, right? When have I ever experienced this? I'm like, I'm like I'm racking my brain. I'm like trying to think about my past. And then one day in the shower, it just hits me. I was like, I gotta write about what literally is happening right now.
Mm. Mm.
Because right now, in this medicine,
Yeah.
having had this first experience, I'm having a breakdown in my friendship community.
Mm,
I have friends that have literally like walked away from me and
mm,
said, I'm not interested in being with you in your world anymore. I have other ones who I've said, I cannot be with you right now, and that's my stuff.
mm. It's huge. It's huge. I've been through that same journey, and it's initially just crushing. It's like, what's wrong? I'm being myself. Shouldn't they love me more? But it's actually through the journey of that, I'm actually becoming my true self, or I've moved on, or I'm now in an area that I'm attracting all, like you've done, attracting all these new people who do value who I am and do relate to what I'm wanting to do. And other people, have been a blessing in that time, but they've moved away, and so it's an interesting experience but it hurts at the time. It's like, what? Aren't you my friend? Haven't you
No,
been my friend for like 20 years? But sometimes it's just because they're in your space for a different reason. You had kids at the same time, or you worked at the same place, or whatever, and you have had great connections. It doesn't devalue that, but that time, that season has gone, and you're in a different space now, and you're also changing a lot because you're not actually change. You think you're changing, but you're actually becoming your true self more and more, right? So it feels
no,
like people will go, who are you? You've changed so much. And you kind of go, well, yes, and actually no, I've actually just being me. I'm removing the layers. I'm understanding my authentic self more, and so it feels like I'm different. So it's a weird journey, right? And I'm
yeah.
sure I'm not
And
the only one who sees it that way.
no, you're totally on it. So here's the thing. It's so funny. It's like, I can't believe this just now occurred to me. So your book, Becoming Annie,
Mm,
and I haven't read it. I'll be honest with you, I haven't read it. And my assumption is that it's your journey of, again, unlayering and really discovering your true authentic self.
yeah,
Yeah. Well, book that I'm writing, so this it's a fourth at some point. I've already started writing, and I knew about this. This is before you and I even connected. Before I knew your actually before I even knew Dawn. Yeah, I mean, before I knew Dawn, I always knew that there were going to be two books.
mm,
One, Leap, about all the leaps of faith that I've taken throughout my life. And
mm,
by the way, the theme of any book that I will ever produce will always be about journeys of my own,
yeah,
because I believe that that's how we connect is by there are wonderful self-help books. There are wonderful journeys like of do these 10 things every day for motivation and breakthroughs and seeing shifts in your life. Those are all have value. And I have some Bibles that I love.
mm,
For me, the way that I rate and relate is what is going on from my vantage point and how can I bring that forward so someone else can see themselves. So one, Leap, which would be
mm,
about all the leaps of faith. The second book, and this is where I want to get to, Unbecoming.
yeah,
So
yeah,
it's funny that yours is Becoming Annie because I always knew that was going to be the title. It's going to be it's Unbecoming, and it's the same concept. It's like peeling those layers back because we show up, and for me, I can't say it for you, but for me, I will tell you that I still show up in ways that'll please other people. I
mm,
abandon components of myself to
yeah,
be to be loved, to be honored. And the moment that we shift that and just say, no, this is who I am, you can
yeah.
either love it or leave it. I'm, I'm who I am and I'm okay with that.
Exactly. And that is the best space to be in. That's where I am in now. Particularly that's been my journey of doing Becoming Annie, because that's it. A lot of it through that journey was, oh my gosh, I'm so self-sacrificial. Like I was so keen to make sure I was seen as a good daughter, seen as a good mom, seen as a great wife, often just, to the point of exhaustion, to the point of like, seriously, I haven't slept enough. I'm working so much to try and be equal, if not better. I'm trying to get my kids to 50 activities. It's exhausting, right? And then, so by actually going, no, I need to say no to this. Like I wasn't used to saying no. I'd always go and say, oh, yeah, sure, 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 because I want to be helpful. I'm a nice person, right? And it was
Right.
crazy. It was this default of, because I want to be lovely, and people like lovely people, and I actually am. I kind of just did it automatically until I suddenly went, yeah, well, that's right. What if I say no? I had this moment of what if I said no because I actually just don't want to do it, and I felt guilty about that, whatever it was at the time. And then, yeah, it's because I need to sleep. And then, and then James started having my husband is having this, happy wife, happy life kind of thing. And it's actually so true in a funny little comedic way, or if mummy not happy, nobody happy. I love that one.
I like that one. Yes. I mean, I've heard the happy wife.
Very perceptive man. And so those couple of little funny sayings, they sort of went, yeah, it's kind of like, oh, they're acting like it's going to be all about me. And I interpret it as if it's so not about me. I'm the one who gives out all the time to everybody. But I kind of went that a couple of truths through that, like of, if I don't actually really look after myself and nurture myself, that's right. So many people, because they were dependent on me, were actually suffering while I thought I was going above and beyond. All they wanted was me to smile and to look calm and to be happy, right? It's really crazy not to be able to be this superwoman who did a million things, right?
Well, here's the thing. But
Yeah,
here's the thing. Superwoman is the woman that stands in her power and has the ability to say yes,
yeah,
owns it, owns the yes and owns the no,
yeah. And is intentional
right?
about everything
Yes.
they do. You know, that's
Yeah.
what I've learned.
And
It's
I love that you
intentional
add that
action.
intentionality.
Yeah, it's
It's not
intentional actions and
it's
sorry.
go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was saying it was, yeah, for me, it's intentional actions about what you do, but also very much what you don't do. It's removing all the distractors. It's removing the things that don't add value to you, or you don't add value to them very much. You're just being helpful. They're just being busy. So for me, it's been, yeah, if you look at superheroes or super extraordinary people, are extraordinary because they do those extra things intentionally and brilliantly, and they love them and they look happy, but they're not exhausted because all those other things they either just don't do, or they outsource, or they leave to someone else because it's their calling, it's their skill set, right? It's their dream or passion. You don't have to live
You don't have to
everybody.
be at all.
You don't have
Ever,
to be at all. Exactly.
ever. And that's just like the beauty. It's like, it was funny. I had this conversation just the other day. It was one of the authors. I'm doing the author spotlights with all of the other authors right now. And it was interesting. So, he'd spent most of his career in corporate America as a trainer and efficiency worker and all this stuff. And so, in that role as a corporate trainer, he really blossomed and he excelled. Right? He was like, you know, I just I just knew it. Right? He leaned into what felt good and felt right and kept doing it and kept saying yes to the things he wanted to say yes to.
Yeah.
The moment that he decided to shift gears, really shift gears and say, I'm going to be a coach because look, I have all these things, right? I've done all these things. I have all these understandings. I have all these learnings. I've now, have this spiritual component. I'm going to use what I've learned in a different way and my tools in a different skill set to unlock other people the way that I was able to be unlocked.
Mm.
And what shifted for him, he's like, all my confidence was gone. How can I do this for other people? Blah, blah, blah. And I was like, and he didn't, it's a reflection now because he's been doing the coaching now for a number of years. And I was like, that's just really interesting for me because from the outside is like, well, we have this quote unquote idea of safety in a workplace environment because someone else is paying your bills. So I'm going to try whatever I would try. And if I fail, I fail. But the moment that we put that in our own responsibility, we don't even give ourselves that credit.
I know, it's crazy, right?
We automatically are like, wait, I don't know if I can. Like we devalue. We do it like, and it's that piece of self abandonment, And I'm not gonna say I'm not guilty of it. Sure,
Yeah,
for sure I've done it. For sure I'm still doing it. Well, the thing is now, I have an awareness.
yeah,
How I get to shift how I acknowledge it and say, no, that isn't really mine. That never really was. So I'm gonna put that on the floor. Someone else can deal with that. If
yeah,
they want to, they can carry that burden. Or I'm going to leave it to the universe. They can carry that burden. Because you know what? I am figuring this out. I am going to do I'm going to lean into the things that make me happy and make me shine and what gets me excited. Because that's the piece. And when I step into that, and I own who I am. If I'm being a B word for the day, sure. Have I done it? Yes.
Yeah.
Guess what? That's where I am today. Deal with it. Like,
Exactly.
deal with it.
Deal with it or tell someone else who cares because I don't. Sorry. Sorry, but not really sorry.
Yeah, and it's not just like yours, right? Like I know I'm talking about a very interpersonal piece.
Mm.
Also recognize that when that shows up around you, that ain't yours either.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, like, I have a former spouse, and we go through ebbs and flows. Like, when I'm in a really good place and I'm standing in my stuff, nothing bothers me.
Yeah.
Nothing. I'm like, I don't care what he has to say, And like this past year, I've been in my pain body for most of it, which is a whole other story. And there have been so many incidences this year where I have just let things slide,
Mm.
let his stuff bother me. I let him show up as the domineering and runner of my life. I'm like, wait a minute. That's why this
You don't
marriage
have
didn't
that
work.
authority. Yeah.
You don't have the authority, but I gave him the authority,
Yeah.
right? I gave it to him. I gave my power away because I didn't show up for me.
Mm. Exactly. And if you don't,
Yeah,
someone else will take that role and they'll
yeah,
happily do it and they'll usually do it to their advantage, right?
absolutely,
It's human
absolutely.
nature.
And whether malicious or not,
No, it's just human nature or
yeah.
opportunistic. So you just go, okay, well, I'll take that, as much as I can. Look at
Hmm.
any child, natural human nature. They're gorgeous, but if you give them a little bit and they know you're not watching, yeah, they'll eat the lolly. They'll take the extra bit, right? They're waiting for consequence. And if there isn't a consequence, it's like, whoa,
I keep
happy
going.
days.
Oh,
I'll eat the whole advent calendar in one day because no one was watching.
well, and perfect timing that you say this because today, so I have a 6-year-old, so
Yes.
at the early stages. I know your kids are older, but mine, the magic of Christmas is just huge right
Oh,
now. Right?
so exciting.
So exciting, and it's amazing, right? And I love it. And this is okay where I also will feel because he discovered where I was hiding all the presents.
Yeah.
He and his friend, and then he's like, "Mom, will you wrap them?" And for me, I was like, "I'm not ready to wrap them yet. Right? I don't want to wrap them and put them on the tree because I want to have that magic of the morning he wakes up and there's all these presents from
Oh,
him, even
yeah.
though he's clean, right?" There was still like that piece, and I was like, "No, I'm gonna wrap them because he's asking me to," and I wrapped them. And you know what's happening? Every single morning, every single day that he's here. Mom, I wish I could open this present. Mom, I could go to this. Mom, I want to open this one. Can I open this one? But it's not. But what happens if it's Christmas today? Kiddo, mom said no.
Mum said
That
no.
doesn't change. It's not
Exactly.
Christmas Day, but you're right. Like it's the same
But it's
concept.
persistent. It's like, I'll try and try and try and try because for some reason he's thinking, and that's it. Because at some stage, mum did crack and mum did give it to me, give me something else. So I know it's a possibility. And that's what it
Yeah,
is, isn't it? Whereas other people, they're like a wall and you go, don't even try.
yeah,
Right? And you go, well
yeah,
done them. They've held firm, right? But most of
yeah.
us got chinks, and those who know as well know what the chinks are. And they'll
Oh
just
yeah, absolutely.
when
And
we're tired or hungry or just hormonal or whatever, they'll go, I'll just go, oh, just do it. And then they go, oh, I've broken her.
right, and that exists, and yes, and I'm so glad that you weave that in because I know we use the conversation on our children, and this exists in every relationship you have
Of
outside of
course.
yourself,
Of
and
course.
even and we want to relationship with ourselves. We
Yes.
do it to ourselves.
Oh, totally.
Right? We're tired. I don't
Totally.
really wanna deal with this right now, so I'm just gonna like, meh, you
I
know?
know. That's right. Look at our self-talk constantly. Yeah, I'm super keen. I'm definitely going to go to the gym tonight. And then like, oh no, I thought I was, but I'm not really because I'd rather watch Netflix.
Right,
And have a
right,
glass of wine. But I'll
yeah,
definitely do it tomorrow because I'm super keen.
and I wanna say this too, and because we do it, be okay with the decision.
Yeah,
There's no reason
own
to
it.
beat
Don't
yourself
beat
up.
yourself up. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, because we do I know I do. I know I do it. I mean, I'm still constantly this is gonna be part of the unbecoming book is the unlearning of this habitual way of being, right?
Yes.
This habitual way, like, I'm supposed to feel bad because I hurt my friend's feelings. Like, I had a situation that happened, this medicine stuff is no joke. Um, I had a situation occur with the person that administered the medicine, and the person that introduced me to it was a different person, and they had a pre-existing friendship, and something, there was something that occurred between myself and the person administering it, and this really upset and hurt the person that introduced me, and
Yeah.
it upset that relationship. And there was this like, oh, but you did, like, you, Jocelyn, you did these things. I'm like, okay, I took actions. Yes, I did. You're
Mm.
right.
Yeah.
You're not gonna disown them, and I'm also not gonna apologize,
Mm.
right? It's open and free, and it wasn't intentional in any way to
Mm.
cause any pain or hurt. None.
Yeah.
That's hers.
Yeah.
And right, and there's a piece of me, like the immediate piece was me, like, oh my gosh, I hurt my friend,
And
da,
so
da, woe was me, and and then I went to the victimhood of I didn't realize what I was doing, and all this stuff, and I was like, wait a minute, no, that's me. I don't know. If if it had shown up differently, and there were different agreements in place, yes.
then
And the way that it's unraveled at present state,
mm.
it's there are things that I have to own, that
Yeah.
I own. There are things that have to be owned outside of myself. That's it.
And also the confidence to actually say something. Often we won't agree. Often we will be on a different place, and that's actually okay. Agree to disagree. Like I approach it, like even from a business point of view, I look at being on boards and I go, the broader the people on the board, the more diversity, the difference is what makes a great board, right? So from a business sense, I'm like going, we want to have robust discussions. I want to have someone completely on the other side, and they annoy you. But
Yes.
their point is valid, and actually that often surfaces the risk and all about compliance and other things, and you get all sort of go, okay, well that actually makes it a really good framework. Whereas in our relationships we're like going, oh no, but if I upset them then I'm wrong, or I'm a bad person, or I should feel guilty because now they seem distant with me or whatever. And you go, no, sometimes that's actually fine. It's fine to go, this is where I'm at, this is where I saw it, there was no intent. And obviously you're seeing it a different way. I hope that, that's their issue to deal with, right? It's so weird. It's so weird that in a friendship perspective, in these relationships, we take it so personally. And I think women do that definitely more than men. And to our detriment, often it's not personal. You're just going about doing your thing, right? Most of the
No,
time it's not personal. Like,
no,
if
it
it
is
is
so
personal,
funny.
then that's a whole other issue. If it's personal, well, let's address that, because I actually don't think we are on the same space. That's a whole different place. Whereas 99% of the time, it's like, it's just, we're different people, right? Make different
Even if
choices.
it's or even if it feels personal, even if it feels personal, it really never actually is.
Yeah.
It's always the other person's, right? It
Yeah.
is always. Like if another person's communicating to you about how they felt or how they were made to feel, blah, 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 that's theirs, right?
Yeah.
But like, and if you and I were in this conversation and I said, you said this thing and it really hurt my feelings, that's mine.
Yeah.
You didn't do anything. You just showed up the way you showed up. I responded the way I showed up.
Mm.
That's it. And it's really interesting because, of course, this is a conversation I literally had with a friend earlier today. We literally were texting back and forth because he was going through something, an experience that he and I had shared, and he had a different perspective on it. And he was sharing like, what I did this thing and then I withheld, and then I didn't take care of my needs in the immediacy, and I held off, and I recognized the impact it has on me. And I responded to him, and I was like, good, now you get to choose differently, right? That was what I
Yeah.
said to him. Mind you, I was part of the experience, but his actions were his, mine were mine.
Yeah.
And I wrote back to him because we're also in like this coaching piece right now. And I wrote back to him. I was like, I also recognize this is not mine at all. It has nothing to do with me. I'm out of my body and having this conversation. This is yours.
Mm.
And it was really funny because the response was, yes, thank you for recognizing this. And this is where we get to share from.
There you go.
And yes, it is because there's no pull.
Exactly.
There's no push or pull and energy from either direction. There's no expectation of someone to feel a certain way. We get to show up in who we are.
Mm. Exactly. I call it just removing the drama. So many people just love being in the drama, right? He said, she said, the emotion, the hurt, the this, the that. Whereas you just go, Okay, well, if we unpack all of that and actually just go what happened and why did it happen, is that awareness, right? And who actually needs to address anything, then it's like, oh, that's right. Thankfully, it's helpful if you approach it from a business side.
Well, yeah, and it's so, and
Like,
you know
that's
what?
right. It's like nothing personal, just business. And we don't want to be robotic and, and so forth. But there's a lot of key learnings that I've had as I've grown in my business life. It's like, yeah, that's right. Just avoid the drama. I don't want to know all the drama. I just want to know the details, and let's deal with that, because that's the
No,
juicy bit. That's where the growth will happen. That's where the change will happen. That's where appreciation and gratitude happens. Often it's like, yeah, so, I mean, I'll do things and think it's sort of my little win, but it was so much more meaningful to someone else, and I needed to know that, and so it's not always not good. Often the time I'll learn through that, because I'm rising above the drama, right? And it's just so powerful. It's like I've just come to a new space of appreciation and gratitude. Often when I would have been lost, 10 years ago, I would have been in the emotion, or, oh my gosh, what did they, you know, all the technicalities around the situation,
well,
right?
cowering to someone else's timeline or someone else's expectation of you,
Yeah.
right? That's been a piece. That's been something that's been coming through a lot, especially today, actually. I received a few notes where people were like, where is this by this? I'm like, well, first of all, we didn't have any agreement around a timeline,
Mm.
number one. Number two, I actually don't know you. I don't. And so it's like, part of this was like the way I was being like, oh, I'll do anything anyone else asks me to.
Yeah.
Oh, and you're right. If I approach life as a business and just be like, we don't have to get tied down to all this emotional grit.
Yeah.
And like, yes, feel it for yourself, sit in it and love it and own it. But you don't have to put that burden on someone else. You don't spit that in the world. Like, it's
Yeah.
yours. And then when you just acknowledge where that is, then you can just show up in a very, very real way. And I like that. Yeah.
Unapologetically, you know?
Yeah.
You don't the
That's
amount of
awesome.
women that I've coached who, as a default, they have this saying, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." They'll
Oh,
they'll start with, "I'm so sorry," and then they'll do their statement of whatever, and I'm like going, "Why are you automatically apologizing? We need to be, if you're actually knowing who you are and living your truth, your best self, then, you will make mistakes sometimes in life, we all do, and then you say that for the time of, I am so sorry. I don't know where that came from. Um, you know, oh, you've frozen. Hang on. Hello, you still there? Oh, you've come back.
yeah, I'm here. Yeah,
Are you
you
there?
froze for a moment. Yeah.
He just went, boop.
Yeah.
Uh, that's right. So that there are, exactly, when you are owning who you are, and things will happen, every now and then, yeah, you will make mistakes. We all make mistakes. We're human. And you say the I'm sorry for then, and you should go above and beyond for, oh my gosh, I don't know what happened there. Where was I? What, I'm definite, that was inexcusable, whatever. Fall on your sword. But for the rest of the time, it's like, don't apologize for
Being
nothing,
you.
for being you, or
Yeah.
apologizing because they might be upset. It's like, you can't be you if you're automatically, I approach it like, if I'm looking back, how can I be moving forward, right? So if you are apologizing back to them of because they might be upset, then you have no space to be your full self, right? Because you're looking away, you're moving away from who you are in every single thing you do. So
Yeah.
it's just not helpful.
I'm so glad that came up because that there were a few things, early on in my awakening process. So I really kind of quote that from the time like when my marriage ended and moving forward. A few things that I really took and imbibed in my way of being. One was, I'm no longer going to say I'm sorry unless it's truly like I have done something that maliciously and intentionally was out to hurt somebody,
Mm.
right? Then I will say it. Because then it's, then there's some dirt behind that, right?
Mm.
But this, I'm sorry because I'm late. I'm sorry, but no, just say like, I'm late. Look, this happened. I'm here now. Let's move forward, right? Um, the woulds and the shoulds.
Mm.
Woulds and shoulds I've really done my best to eliminate. I do use them occasionally, to really try to eliminate those from my vocabulary. And this is stuff, the teachings that I do with my clients as well. Is when we say we would do this, or you tell
Yeah.
someone else they should do this. Love the terminology of you're shitting all over someone else. Those words have expectation.
Yeah.
An expectation, oh gosh, that sounds like a dirty word because it kind of is, right? When we expect someone to show up in a way differently from themselves, we expect ourselves to be higher and better or doing something in a way that we're not ready for, or not, we're not energetically present to, or we're just not, whatever.
Mm.
Those expectations of a performance, of like book sales or whatever it is, we don't meet those. We automatically put ourselves in a position of we haven't we haven't achieved,
I
like a
know.
BS. We're constantly achieving, we're constantly growing. And if it means we have to take a step back, that's also growth.
Yeah.
That's also growth. So the woulds and the shoulds eliminate, eliminate, because the moment that we live in the moment of where we are and love and honor that, even if it's in a really crappy place, this is not always rainbows and butterflies, people. The moment that we love on all of it, that's the freedom.
Mm. That is total
No one else
freedom.
gets to. It's
Yeah.
our freedom,
Yeah.
you
Because that's
know?
it. And then we own our, if we were late, for example, well, we were late because we chose to do something else. They're choices, aren't they? We're late. When someone says I was stuck in traffic, well, you probably chose to do something else and then left it too short and then you were stuck in traffic. Or there was just a breakdown and there was traffic. So I was late just because there was a reason. They're all
And
choices
it
that we have. We use our 24 hours a day according to, what we value. At the end of the day, that's it. And so we don't have to apologize for that. We did it. It's about having awareness and making those choices better for us. And the other things, it's like, yeah, well, that's right. It was just lower on the values. It's like it just didn't align, and therefore I didn't do it. I don't need to apologize about that because I was obviously just enjoying something else. And if someone else
and it
got
lets
sad about that, well, that's their issue. It's just the way it
mhm.
is. And so yeah, deal.
Yeah,
And but
let's
people
say
aren't
you
used
and
to hearing that. They're like, oh my gosh,
oh, because
you know.
we don't talk in these ways, right?
No.
We don't allow our, like, we're so conditioned to show up for others.
Mm,
Women more so than men, but
yeah.
yeah, it's still there's still pieces of that for men, right? We have been told that the way that we are meant to value people is we show up for them and we take care of them and we buy the things and we spend the time. That's a whole bunch of baloney. It really is. So let's just take an example. Here we were meant to meet at a certain time to start this show. Let's just say I was 10 minutes late,
Hmm.
right? Because I chose to do whatever I chose to do. I was 10 minutes late. It does not devalue you,
Hmm.
and it does not devalue this conversation. It does not devalue what we're creating in this conversation. It just is.
Yeah. It just is.
And the moment we accept that for what it is, that again, that's that piece of the freedom.
Mm.
But we have been like so. I don't know, as much as what you work with your clients on. I know this comes up a lot with mine. It's all about this
Oh,
external conversation
yeah.
that has we've internalized as our own. That
Yes.
are meant to, like, you watch the TV shows and you see how doting women are on their husbands and having dinner ready. Oh, that doesn't. Okay, maybe that's the way you want to do that. It doesn't mean if you don't do that that you don't love your spouse any less or you don't love them. Like it doesn't. But we
Exactly.
have to get in that conversation. That's the truth.
Exactly. And if you want to do that, and that is who you are, not who they are, who you are,
Yes.
and you want to be at home and have the dinner perfect and have your lippy on
Yeah.
and have your hot
And that,
lingerie underneath and you're all at the ready, you live that life. Like, go for it, but you can't do it all. You can't also then go, okay, well, I've been out at work and driving kids around and doing bits and pieces. That's right. It's like it's how we live our life is a choice. And that's right. It doesn't mean that one is better than the other. There's no right and wrong of it. It's just it's just who we are and the choices that we make. And the freedom, as you were talking about before, comes from actually going, but this is, I'm living my journey. I'm not living someone else's journey, which is what you're referring to. And I've been having those conversations with my now adult children, about, you know, those natural expectations. As a fine line as a parent of you wanting, them to achieve their greatness, and you wanting them to aim high and have big expectations for themselves. But because you're a parent, as a teenager, they'll then still go, oh, I don't want to let, they'll come out with words of, I don't want to let you down, I know you're not going to be happy with this, I'd really want to do something else. One of mine, wants to be musical theatre shows and bits and pieces. And she is a teacher. So it's whether you do full time teaching or whether you try and do shows, and then COVID's on and, life happens. And so it's really interesting. I went, why do you automatically go, I'm not going to be happy? And she goes, because I know you want me to, be a career person or be this, be that. I go, I want you to be you. And so, yes, when you were growing up, because you didn't have all of these things mapped out for who your true self is yet. Yes, I wanted you to say, go to uni, get your best qualification, whatever. Whereas now you're in your early 20s and you're realizing all these things about yourself. You should follow that best self, right? And so it's not as if you were wrong before. You don't need to have all this parent guilt, of course, but you also need to go, yeah, if I was still at 30 going, well, you should have done that course, that would have been the better thing for you, and she's completely unhappy, then who wants that, right? And how many people are living someone else's dream, right?
Oh,
I would love to refer back to actually when we first started talking, and you were saying, that you found yourself in 2017 unhappy. How do you suddenly become unhappy to the point of we need to divorce? How do we get to that state?
how does it happen? Yeah.
So much stuff has
Yeah.
happened to actually have that moment of going, I
Of
just
course.
can't live this someone else's situation anymore. I have to be myself, right?
Yeah, I mean, so many things. And you talked earlier about there's so many things here. You mentioned earlier about the driving and like you get stuck in traffic. Here, just an example of this, right? Um, I worked out of the house, and it took usually about 30 minutes to drive home. And if I got stuck in traffic and I was like 35 minutes, 40 minutes to get home, the automatic was, oh, you must be cheating. And to talk about like a trauma response that came out of that, I used to speed and weave through traffic so that I didn't have to deal with that.
Yeah,
Rather than saying, you know what, I just got stuck. Like I didn't have the fortitude of myself to
yeah.
say, I just got stuck in traffic, deal with it. I didn't have that, right? I didn't have that for the most. I probably had that early in the relationship, and it just kept getting
Knocked down. Yeah.
down, knocked down, knocked down. So like we both had we had really complementary core wounds, and I just wasn't I wasn't strong enough in myself to stand up for myself, right? So
Mm.
those things like that occurred throughout. And what happened, what had really happened was we moved here. We moved to Colorado. We moved from Pennsylvania to Colorado, and it was a choice that we made to
Mm.
move out here because we really wanted to start something new, and we wanted to live in this new environment. We didn't really care for where we were living. That meant that I walked away from a very prolific career that I was running at the time. I worked in the eye care business, so I know you're familiar with
Yeah.
that. Having done a little work in there yourself, just a few years, I walked away from that career, and it was a very conscious conversation. Like my employer knew that I was leaving, and they closed it out and helped me to make this dream possible.
Mm.
We had a business that we closed about 6 months after we moved out here. But when I finally had the final moment, because I had asked for so long to let's go seek an outside therapy. I want to
Mm.
have a person to kind of help us navigate through the things that we're having trouble navigating through. And when he decided he wasn't going to go, after he finally agreed to it, decided that morning that he wasn't going to go, sort of the final nail in the coffin for me.
Yeah.
But there were so many things that were happening. It really came down to, all of it really came down to I didn't show up for me
Yeah.
anyway,
Yeah.
at all. I exhausted myself. I took care of, so like we both worked full time. He owned a business downtown. So he was in the small town we were living in. So on the weekends, I was alone with my child predominantly. So I was a full-time employee, full-time mom,
Mm.
making all the meals, and the expectation was I made them from scratch,
Yeah.
like hot meals every night. I was making baby food from scratch a lot of times. I was doing all these things for everybody else, and it wasn't taking care of me
Yeah.
at
You're
all.
exhausted. Yeah.
I was exhausted, and it was years, like, it went through on for 3 years, and so I will tell you, like, honestly, we moved out here, and after things, transpired, and we went to separate households, I will tell you, I did check out from parenthood for a
Mm.
while. I
Mm.
did, 'cause I was still holding resentment. I was
Yeah.
like, "No, I did this for 3 years. You can carry the burden for a little while. Our
Yeah.
child's fine. He's 3, right? He's 4. He's gonna be okay." Now, obviously, it's shifted a lot in those last 3 years. We both have moments where we both can step up for the other parent if the other parent's going through the situation. Our
Mm.
conversation has changed, our communication has changed. Um, but it was I had I kept abandoning myself,
Mm.
and I did it for years, and I knew it.
Mm.
There are pieces of me. I mean, like, I remember there was one night I went and had dinner with a friend of mine that had known since we were 8 years old. Been friends our entire life, and we went and met in a town that was about 45 minutes from where we were both living. We met back in our hometown for dinner, and we had a couple drinks. And I just had no business driving, and I had an opportunity to stay at our parents' house because we were like down the street, and could have easily stayed there. It would have been very smart of me to do this. And do you know what I did? I drove home that night because I was so worried.
Mm.
I was so concerned about what my spouse was going to say to me.
Mm.
Having home.
Where have you been? Yeah.
By then, now mind you, we had cell phones. I could have called and be like, I had too much to drink. I'm not driving home."
Yeah.
Dumb, dumb decision, right?
Mm.
Thank God I'm here to tell
Yeah.
that story. Thank God no one got hurt, right? That I didn't get hurt. That I didn't hurt anyone else. But
Yeah.
that was the stuff that that was what I was doing.
Mm.
I
Mm.
kept showing up that way, and I look back at that time, and I'm like, no kidding, no one was going to show up for me because I didn't. Who
You
would show
didn't
up for
show
me?
up for yourself. Exactly, exactly. And I find I thank you for sharing that because I know it's a very raw sharing your own situation, but it's exactly like that. I often find, actually, most of the time, because I coach women who come to me feeling overwhelmed and stressed, and they'll say they're not confident and they're exhausted. But often the core to that, actually, always the core to that, is they've become an empty shell. They're
Right,
so depleted. That's why they're getting the other things are symptoms of actually you're not showing up for yourself at all. In fact, you don't even know. I'll go and say, "So who are you?" And they can't even articulate. They are roles. I'm a mom, I'm
yes,
this, I'm that. Whereas, someone who is in touch with themselves and they go, "Well, I'm a really creative being and I just love, I get excited by, painting or serving people or getting, whether it's rock climbing or whatever it is, they'll suddenly go, I know who I am and what makes me get excited and what brings me energy and who I love being with. And you just feel all of this
conversations you generate.
showing up to yourself, right? I mean, that's what we're like. We show up because we love, obviously, I love mentoring and coaching people. I love being on my podcast. I love writing for things, because that's who I am. It allows me to be myself, right? And so, yeah, that's exactly when you're making those decisions and you're like exhausted and you're doing things for all people, and then you make these crazy decisions to drive while drunk or drive while tired or drive like a lunatic because of someone else's potential issue. It's
Right.
mental, right? It's a time
Yeah.
to go, that's why I'm exhausted and stressed and on edge and highly overreactive. But it's because at the core, when we really break it down, you're giving them that power, you're giving them that authority, and you're not showing up 100%. You're not showing up to who you are. In fact, you need to spend more time getting to know who you are, right? And
Oh
just
my gosh.
yeah.
Something else that just came through too. I remember my child was very young, and I decided I was going back to therapy. And um, I think I remember trying to schedule it during times in which I could leave my child with him, so I didn't have to bring my child with me because we didn't have childcare for
Yeah.
whatever that space was. And I remember clearly having to bring my child because he wouldn't. who would make himself available for that.
Mm.
And, I look back at that and I was like, and I remember when it was happening, I was so pissed. I remember actually the first time it happened and I showed up therapy with my child. And my therapist didn't have to say anything. I already felt it. I was like, this is the end.
Yeah.
I mean, that was a year and a half earlier. I already knew. I was like, if this is happening now,
Mm.
I
Mm.
can't. Because that's outside of me, right? I can only, yes, I will tell you, I did not own my own stuff. In this situation, I was actually doing something to take care of myself.
Yeah. You're being proactive. Yeah.
Now, okay, I could have found a babysitter. Okay, I had other options, but that was a core piece right there, right? So yeah,
But he was sabotaging you at that time to keep the control.
Yeah.
My thoughts.
And here's the thing. I want to be really clear. I know I kind of feel like I'm digging at him. The reality is, yes. Did he have his part? Absolutely. Here's the part of it though. I have to own how I showed up because I gave him permission to show up the way he showed up.
Yeah.
Because I didn't. I taught him how to treat me. I gave him the roadmap. It's okay to do this to me. It's okay to be this way. It's okay not to show up for me because I'm okay with it. No, I'm not.
This is not okay. Not working for you at all.
So, hard lesson.
Wow.
Grateful for it because now I know differently and now I can do differently. And now I get to teach differently. Now I know that's a gift.
Such a gift. I can't believe our time has gone by so
I know. I'm like, we're overtime.
I know. I'm going to have to trim down this series, this episode. That's okay. There's so much juicy stuff. I'll have to make choices. Anyway, so how do people find you, Jocelyn? Those people who want your book, they want to reach out to you.
Yeah, best way to find me. I do everything through my Facebook page. So Jocelyn.Bellows24. And you can find the book on Amazon and you can search it by breakdown. You can search my name in the Amazon search box, or you can find the book on donbates.com/Jocelyn Bellows. And it's the breakdown to wake up journey beyond the now. That's book 1. And just be aware, guys, there's more coming because book 2 is coming out in June of 2021. And book 3 will be the breakdowns in society and targeting for December about this time next year. So stay tuned for more.
So much in the pipeline, and that's a classic example of a woman who's just found her zone, right? You're in your lane now and you're just like, whoo, I'm on the highway now, and all these things start coming out and all these new people start getting attracted, and it's actually not hard. And look how gorgeous you look. You're just happy and healthy and you've got energy, and well done to you. It's been such a joy meeting you, and I know we're now getting to speak on different events together, which is super cool, and I just love that. I love women collaborating globally, just doing their thing, not competing with each other, just owning their space and just being, beautiful humans to each other as we all just, walk our walk in this life.
Right.
And so thank you for being on my show today. And I look forward to catching up.
Wonderful. What a beautiful unfolding. I really enjoyed this.
Fantastic. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Memoirs of Successful Women. You can find me at anniegibbins.com, where you can download my free resources, get connected on social, and check out my online magic transformation program. If you love this show, feel free to subscribe to future episodes and, of course, share it with your friends. I'll see you again soon, and until then, happy podcasting.